In Module 5, we began speaking about sexual practices or sexual behaviors. In other words, we talked about what people actually do when they engage in a sexual act. We discussed the fact that scholars have suggested, despite the extreme variation in sexual behaviors and potential for sexual acts, that most people stick to a fairly predictable sexual routine. Some scholars have suggested if we took sexual behaviors and lined them up from the most vanilla to the kinkiest acts, that you would find the majority of people engage in acts such as coitus, fellatio, and cunnilingus the majority of the time. However, the challenge with looking at this type of bell curve analogy is it does tend to create a false dichotomy, with those that engage in acts such as coitus, fellatio, and cunnilingus versus those that engage in acts on the tails or extreme ends of the curve. Therefore, other scholars have suggested a better way to think about sexual behavior is to think of a continuum where people can move up and down throughout their sexual lives. At different times in their lives, individuals may spend more times at different parts of the continuum, and this can be impacted by social forces as well as their interactions with other people. In this module, we also looked at some actual data on sexual practices from the National Survey of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles. The finding of the three survey waves conducted between 1990 and 1991, 1999 and 2001, and 2010 to 2012 supported the theoretical arguments made that most people engage in sexual practices such as coitus, cunnilingus, and fellatio. However, the findings of the survey also suggested that other genital contact is also a common sexual practice across the life course. While we did see that older individuals in their senior years generally have a decrease in sexual acts, we did see that many folks in their 60s and 70s continue to be sexually active. One other surprising finding from this particular set of surveys is the median or middle number of occasions of sex in the past 4 weeks for people aged 16 to 44. In the first two surveys, the middle or median number is somewhere around 4 to 5. But in the last wave of the survey, between 2010 and 2012, this decreased to a median of about 3. An interesting finding that warrants further exploration to consider what factors might have led to this shift. In both the discussion and in the final mini lecture in this module, we looked at Gail Rubin's understanding of sexual stratification. Specifically, Rubin's model of the charmed inner circle that encompasses sexual acts that are deemed good, normal, natural, or even blessed, and the contrasting outer limits, where sexual acts are coded as bad, abnormal, unnatural, and even damned. Rubin suggests that this division of sexual acts creates a sexual caste within our nation. However, we are seeing changes as some acts that were once deemed to be in the outer limits are moving closer towards the charmed inner circle. To further unpack the model of the charmed inner circle and outer limits, we question the role of social institutions in creating sexual stratification and policing sexual behaviors. Specifically, we explored the role of medicine, which in the past has been used to cure individuals in the lower castes of our sexual model. Historically, doctors worked to figure out various methods and techniques to heteroize members of society, which Rubin argues blurred the lines between humanity and artificiality. Given the importance that we place on sexual identity in our society today, it's sometimes easy to forget that many people engage in sexual acts that they completely separate from how they identify as an individual. In fact, many people engage in sexual practices that have nothing to do with how they present themselves to society at large. Of course, it can be problematic when a sexual behavior, such as a same sex interaction, can be linked to inequality or one's inability to access resources and opportunities. However, for many people, the various things that are done in a sexual situation have very little to do with their lives outside of the bedroom. So, in posting your final thoughts for this module, I'd like you to think about the relationship between sexual behaviors and sexual identities, specifically considering the fact that we live in a sexually stratified society. Do you think our sexual behaviors align or must align with our sexual identities? Why or why not? I'm also interested in your response to the reading by Tony Silva, Bud Sex. What do the experiences of the men in this study tell us about the relationship between sexual behaviors and sexual identities?